This video was born out of something I noticed while I was compiling or completing the Ravens game file where I track data live during the game, try to share that with people on my Patreon and Discord. And I need to improve my process, get quicker at doing so in the ensuing weeks. But something interesting that I noticed on consecutive possessions in the second quarter. It's the fifth and sixth possession for the Ravens. In a moment, I will actually show the game file briefly. There will be some film here, but I'm not going to, this is not a possession analysis where I go through every single play. I think I do have like 13 or 14 plays queued up, but to illustrate some of the differences between the personnel choices and the plays that flow thereafter from Todd Monken. In the fifth possession, if you recall, we had a missed field goal by Tucker, 53, 54-yarder, something in that, somewhere in that range. Sixth possession, we have the field goal to end the first half. Really, that drive to end the second quarter was a preview of the final drive, the ill-fated drive from the standpoint of Isaiah likely being one toe out of bounds, but a brilliant throw by Lamar, brilliant example, if you ask me, of his tenacity, Lamar's tenacity, ability to remain calm and make plays with his feet and his arm. The throw to Likely, I think, stands as evidence number one there. But we're going to focus on personnel usage here, meaning we all, myself included, have at times complained about play calls. Everyone who's a football fan or coach or whatever has done so at times. As Ravens fans, we have natural right to do so, especially in 2024, coming off of the AFC Championship game last year. I do wonder if this team requires far deeper analysis or focus from the standpoint of personnel groups, because Monken is going to switch between multiple personnel groups on many possessions, but I wonder about the design of some of this, meaning the fifth possession, and you'll see it here as we go through the data. The personnel data is the third column from the left. 11, 12, 21, no 22, no 20 personnel. 20 personnel is something I think the Ravens need to get into at some point, because as Ricard and Derrick Henry, or Ricard and Justice Hill on the field with three wide receivers, so you're definitely going to get the nickel defense by our opponent. But in any case, you can see we're vacillating between personnel groups here. In fact, the first three plays, three different personnel groups. So Todd Monken is getting, by this point, I think, has gotten a handle on what the defense is doing based on how they're lining, who's coming on the field for the Chiefs, how they're lining up with the ball on the right hash or the left hash, and then what coverages probably flow from there. I have no idea what his call sheet looks like. I have no idea how they structure it. Only base it off of my experience, which is obviously extremely limited, maybe 2% of the complexity of what those guys do. So it's fascinating for me to try to even look at some of this stuff. Again, this is the possession, the fifth possession in the third quarter, ends with a missed field goal. And I'll show about 4 plays from this drive to talk about it. But if you compare the personnel data for this drive to the very next one, which is after Roquan Smith's interception. So we basically had the ball for the entire fifth possession, missed a field goal near midfield. The Chiefs get the ball one play, interception by Roquan in the middle of the field. We get the ball right back. You can see that we began this sixth possession on our negative 49-yard line, so pretty much near midfield. But everything here is 12 personnel, except for one play, the 3rd and 1. That's the jet pitch to Justice Hill that I think I'll show here a little bit later in the video. Again, we're not trying here to go over every single play from these drives. We're way past that, I think, but trying to get into the database again that I try to upkeep, and usually by week 13 or 14, it's very difficult to keep up. There's just too many numbers to enter. It'll be interesting to see anything that flows out of the personnel groups. We run the same formations from each personnel group, pretty much. Ricard presents some limiting factors there in terms of what formations we can line up in. We're not going to line up in flex 4 wide with Ricard on the field. But we'll line up in trips. We'll line up in spread. Various formations that flow from each personnel group are the same. The play calls may differ to the side of the field or the boundary. I'm extremely interested in how we utilize 12 personnel. I think it could turn into one of the more unique and diverse personnel groups that we have seen as Ravens fans in a long time, and maybe even across the NFL. So let's get to a little bit of the film here. This is fifth possession prior to Roquan's interception. This culminates in Justin Tucker's missed field goal. I do think it's worth mentioning here. Call it sour grapes if you want, that we get a pass interference in the middle of the field. This reminds me of week 3 against the Colts at home last year, where Zay is pretty much grabbed. Maybe it's not as egregious as this one, but I thought it was damn close. Drew Tranquil is a guy who he's an underrated football player. I think he's re-signed with the Chiefs, so they clearly think highly of him. So this is not meant to be disrespectful of him at all. I actually am a huge fan of inside linebackers. I think you all know that. But that's a guy we can attack if we face them again, whether it's likely, whether it's Zay Flowers, whoever, into the boundary. We know where he's going to be. This is 11 personnel, so there's Mark Andrews. But we've set the twins into the field, meaning the two receivers. The Rams actually did a ton of this with Cooper Kupp, put two receivers into the boundary, tied into the field. You're trying to basically elicit pre-snap, whether it's going to be man or zone. This happens to be a DPI on Tranquil. So 12 personnel, what's the difference? If we do this, it's going to be likely over into the boundary, or it's going to be Andrews over into the boundary as opposed to a second receiver. Moving on a little bit here, still fifth possession. I love this play out of 12 personnel. This jet sweep to the tight end side with Zay Flowers or whoever it is, and then potential for the run back into the boundary against it. It's 12 personnel, so the Chiefs happen to be in their nickel front here, the nickel look, so 5 defensive backs. One defensive back, it's Connor, I believe. Ends up being free, so Zay's got to make him miss. But we can block this from a jet sweep perspective, no matter who you are, number one. Number two, we don't have to block that guy. And that's what I love about jet dive or anything against a particular badass defensive tackle. We can make him be wrong because of the 3 choices here. Choice number 1, it's not a read by Lamar, it's a play call. The sweep to Zay. Choice number 2, the run into the boundary by by Derrick Henry. And choice number 3, the boot off of it by Lamar, setting up for a pass concept. This one goes down, I think it only goes down for a 6-yard gain. I would be okay if we ran this with Bateman sometimes. We did it last year against the Cardinals on the road in a big spot. I thought it was a 3rd down, but I could be wrong. It's under center. It happens fast. You as a defender have to play this like option. Basically, what's your read? Go to your responsibility because you don't see the football. And that's one of the benefits at times to being under center. I'm not saying we need to be there, but 12 personnel under center. We may not be a power running team with Likely and Andrews on the field, but we have things like this in our pocket, I think, that's set up extremely well for our skill sets, meaning Zay on the sweep or Bateman or anybody else. Derrick Henry running opposite into the boundary, and then our 2 tight ends, Likely and Andrews, to the field, potentially on play action. But this doesn't stress them as much as blockers, in my opinion, because they're able to go out in space and go get people. I believe this is a penalty here, as well as the run by Derrick Henry. Now, we're in 21 personnel. So what we get out of the Chiefs' defense in 21 personnel could look different because you have a tight end, a fullback, and a tailback on the field. So we've elicited their 4-3. There's their 3 inside linebackers. Chenal, Bolton, and Tranquil, who's walked up on the edge. He's a very versatile guy. And Henry's got great vision. There's all this wall of blockers and defenders here. So he brings this back into the space. It's a great read. I think it's a pretty good job, to be honest with you, by our right guard. Not sure if I give you of at least identifying where the threat is. Not sure if I gave the end zone angle for this one. I did not. My apologies. Moving forward, 5th possession. 11 personnel, twin slot, post motion. It ends up being complete to Andrews underneath. This one's called back for Ronnie Stanley being off the line of scrimmage. I wish they would just not let these guys have their back foot back. I remember the days in the 90s and 2000s where these offensive lines were like bowed almost like the letter V. Maybe that drawing there is a little bit unrealistic or not accurate. But 11 personnel, just like I mentioned on the first play with Zay to the boundary, now we've got 2 players to the boundary, but one of them happens to be a tight end, Andrews. So again, you're talking about getting the boundary side inside linebacker. For the Ravens defense in 2023, that would have been Patrick Queen. For the Ravens defense in 2024, it's going to be Trenton Simpson. For the Chiefs, it's Drew Tranquil, who again I think is a good player, but whether it's Likely, whether it's Andrews, or whether it's a receiver over there, we can A, figure out the coverage, and we can B, take advantage of that matchup. Second thing to mention here, the Chiefs did a ton of this. Basically, cover 2 to the boundary, regardless of what was happening to the field. There was oftentimes man on 1 to the field, whoever it was, but an inside leverage, inside linebacker, outside leverage corner who's pretty much sitting in the flats, and then a half field safety who is accepting funneled receivers, meaning receivers that have been funneled between these two defensive players. Consistently to our right into the boundary. That's what the Chiefs played. Likely, I think, is a great option into the boundary. That's obvious because not only can he catch the ball into the boundary if it's zone defense, but he can make people miss and turn what could have been a 4-yard gain into a 7 or an 8. Andrews can as well, but I feel like at this point, likely has a little bit more shiftiness, change of direction. Same drive, incomplete to Bateman. Look, the left guard is beat here if I recall the play. Maybe that was a previous play. My apologies. We consistently were running this concept whereby the number 1 receiver is kind of sitting in or stopping his route near the top of the numbers, and the number 2 receiver is running basically a smash concept, smash in, whatever you want to call it. We got pressure on Lamar on the right-hand side by Karlaftis and up the middle. Not sure who that defensive tackle is. I think it's 96, 98. He had one good rep against Linderbaum as well. This one, I think, ends up against Voorhees. Regardless of whether it's 11 or 12, we've got to be able to protect better. So I'm not here to discuss that necessarily in this instance. But even though we're in 12 personnel, you can see the nickel defender is down here to Andrews' side. That kind of opens up slightly different coverage of options for the Chiefs. But you can see, once again, it's essentially a cover 2 to that side, man to the top side on Zay Flowers. That was a 3rd and 8. We, of course, missed the field goal. And then we get the interception, fortunately, on this next play. Travis Jones, I think this is the one where he basically walks back the center into Mahomes' lap, and Mahomes' ill-advised throw over the middle. Also, very, very interesting that you have basically the same dynamic up to the top side of the screen. The Chiefs right, our defense is left. Pretty much the same dynamic exists with a cover 2, and then the route combination that the Chiefs ran. I did not intend that here, but that's how it worked out. So 6 possession, we take over, and we go almost exclusively 12 personnel. Do we look better in 12 personnel? That's the point of this video. I don't know. I don't know the yards per play. I didn't go look it up anywhere. I do really love the fact that we can, if we have both tight ends on the field, we can run a route with one of them, and then this one-man screen stuff. I think there is tremendous potential for these. It's basically a route combination by everyone else, the other 3 eligible receivers, and a one-man screen tagged onto it. And Justice Hill, to me, is exceptional. I think Justice Hill is better than most other running backs in the league at gaining yards from the bottom of the numbers to the sideline. I'm not talking about, what he does all in here. But for whatever reason, he seems to be able to skirt along the sideline, and his burst he looks like he's a perfect fit for Todd Monken's offense in a lot of ways. The run-pass ratio when he's on the field and we're in the shotgun, obviously that needs to change. So there needs to be some real self-analysis or self-scouting there. I love being able to run routes and run the one-man screen off of it with a tight end. Don't get me wrong, we're good with Ricard on that as well in terms of it being an option. But Likely and Andrews being out there, I think, is more often going to elicit the nickel defender. And in this case, the nickel defender is to the field. We're doing this to the field. We could just as easily flip this and do this to the boundary. And if so, then the nickel defender would not be there. You'd be talking about the boundary side inside linebacker, Drew Tranquill. Again, we stayed in pretty much 12 personnel the whole time. This is the one that left guard is beat on. Again, my apologies for misidentifying, but 12 personnel trips. So we've got Andrews and Likely on the same side of the field. So the nickel defender is obviously to the field where we have the trips receivers. We've lost here. We've totally lost our posture and our balance at left guard. Lamar isn't really even given time to assess getting to a second read here, which could potentially be Likely underneath. I'm not sure we're going to go to that anyway because Bolton has passed off Andrews' route to the boundary side safety, something that the Chiefs were doing a lot when we did go trips to the field, and it's commonly used, is the boundary side safety is going to take a look in this direction because the Chiefs, are fully aware that Andrews loves this route here. And so I think there's a lot to be said about Andrews' route that looks like that. And then he does multiple things. He sometimes will hop over the top of it, and Lamar will just float it out there. So this ends up disappearing or vacating because it's man to that side. Or, and this one's a little bit controversial and some people aren't going to like it, is Andrews bringing his route just to, that's too far, just to the inside of Bolton and then bringing it back up here and essentially accomplishing the same task down here. I think a lot of times the Chiefs are playing man on one and then a zone match structure against 2 versus 3. Bolton has released Andrews inside, and he's releasing him to the backside safety. Pure man turn here up to the top. So I think there's some options for us with Andrews that still, to me, against trips, if we're going to see that by the backside boundary side safety, that are still going to put us in a situation where we have lower efficiency. Skipped a couple of plays here. Sidearm throw from Lamar, complete to Likely against zone. Another example of Likely and Andrews being on the same side of the field. This time the Chiefs have walked a safety in the middle of the field, and he's definitely keying Andrews, trying to match that route. Andrews goes vertical, kind of forces 2 defenders to go with him, the nickel defender 27, and then the middle of the field drop safety, if you want to call him. It's a 2nd and 4, so we're able to pick up the first down kind of easily. You may say, well, Coach, they're just giving this to us. We have 2 drives against the Chiefs defense from last week. The final drive where we almost scored the game-tying or game-winning touchdown, or maybe game-losing if we go for 2 and don't make it. And we have this late drive in the second quarter. I'll be interested to see what the Chiefs do between now and potentially a rematch with them in the playoffs if we're blessed enough to get there and face them again. What do they do late in games? And what do they do late in games against well, there's no more Lamar Jacksons, but there are Josh Allens out there. There's other guys who are athletic and can make plays with their feet. I'll be interested to see what Spagnuolo's coverages are late in halves and late in games as we get through the season. Basically, what I'm saying is, if that's what he's going to do, Lamar has the answer for that. He has multiple answers for that. We have matchups to the boundary with Likely that we can win, as I explained earlier. We have complementary play concepts off of that. And then ultimately, if they're going to rush forward and play soft coverages, Lamar Jackson's going to find a gap and be able to get through there. So it's a interesting dynamic, let's put it that way, if we get that situation again. Likely into the boundary again, same coverage. Very similar concept. You can see Likely turns this back in, accelerates around Tranquil. Notice the corner kind of squatting here in the flats again, and then half-field safety kind of getting some depth. The inside linebacker, in this case to the boundary. Tranquil is leveraging 2, meaning he's inside leverage of 2. Likely sits it down. This is easy. Lamar's able to get the ball out. Inside of 30 seconds left. Conceptually, the way the Chiefs end up covering this, 4 to the field. So 4 over 3. Here's your 3 for the Ravens. And 4 defenders. And then to the boundary, 3 for the Chiefs, 2 for the Ravens. So 4 over 3, 3 over 2. Classic defense that exhibited by Spagnuolo. Not saying that anybody else does anything much different as a day 1 install. 3rd and 1. This one kind of surprised me, number 1. Number 2, this one, I think, were we to face the Chiefs again or a team with a player like Chris Jones, there's really not many other Chris Jones, we normally are pinning down with the tight end and pulling with the H-back / fullback, whatever, and the play side tackle, which is exactly what we do here. The problem with that is that means we're trying to reach Chris Jones with the right guard. I just don't think we're going to be able to do that. I don't. Linderbaum ends up running into him and kind of getting in his way, but Jones is, in fact, the first guy to get there and touch us. I do wonder about adjusting versus some of this stuff. Number 1, number 2, we're running the jet here, and we're running the jet away from the bunch to the field. Yes, you would have difficulty blocking this player if you ran the jet here, unless you go get him with Bateman, who had an extremely poor game blocking, in my opinion. That's about all I'll say. If they're playing man here, then theoretically this corner would have to go with Bateman, but he is definitely keen and looking in the backfield until the ball is snapped, and then getting his eyes back to Bateman. So were we to give on the jet there, is it going to be 2-on-2 even? Is it going to be 2-on-3, meaning is one of these guys, inside linebacker or DN, going to be running inside out here to deal with Zay? It's possible. It's a 3rd and 1, so I'm not sure I love the play call if we ran jet sweep. I'm just saying if we want to have the jet be most effective, we're going to have to run the jet at a bunch or trips away from it, whether it's to the field or to the boundary. The Rams do it. They did it the other day against the Lions. So my suggestion or my thought is, and this is kind of crazy, I think you can really only say this with Linderbaum, and I don't know who else in the NFL you could do this with. You're normally pulling the tackle to get out of here on this pin pull pitch. That's what everybody does. I almost wonder if we should down block here on Jones with the tackle and pull Linderbaum. Now, as it works out, McCarry is a guy who gets a key block. It'd be a long way for McCarry to go as the second puller. You can see there's 3 pullers here. Ricard is 1, McCarry is 2, and Linderbaum is 3. I don't know that if we run the jet more, we can't hold one of these guys a little longer on the backside. I think Stanley does a good job with him. We end up getting the first down. It's a short yardage play, so you may say, Coach, I don't think we need to go into all that on a play that was a successful, mission accomplished. In my opinion, I think we've got to do some adjustments for some of the way we block stuff at times based on the players that we are encountering at the point of attack, at or near the point of attack. This is the unfortunate play, a great play by Leo Chenal, but unfortunate for us that we're there in this 3+1 look. It is 12 personnel trips. Again, we have likely to the boundary, which will be an interesting thing if you ask me to see. Do we ever go back down here to likely one-on-one against some of the DBs that he's going to be facing? In this case, I think it's Watson, who's a heavy, big, strong man, physical corner. This is a great read by Lamar. You want to be real picky, like, hey, do you not see the guy in the window? No, he probably doesn't, because there's an offensive lineman and then 2 other guys engaging each other. I think I give you the end zone angle so you can see it for yourself. So, like, I'm not super picky about it. It happens. I think it's a great play by Leo Chenal. It's the look that they gave us, the 3+1, meaning 3 dedicated rushers, and then +1 being the QB spy / additional 4th rusher, was not beneficial overall for the Chiefs throughout the entirety of the game, particularly on that last drive. But it's a fantastic play by him, because this is a touchdown, obviously, that ends up being a big moment for us because we had to settle for a field goal there after this incompletion to Justice Hill. I didn't like this play call, to be honest with you. We were helping out there into the boundary with the edge defender, and Karlaftis spins back to the inside because he sees the chip coming by Justice Hill. We had trouble with pass pro at times, obviously, so we needed to get rid of the ball quick. This is another example. Look, your outside leverage with the corner, safety sitting there, and then inside linebacker who's inside leverage. It's 3/2 classic to the boundary. I didn't think that this was a great option for us. I believe we were out of timeouts there, but I could be wrong. I'm really glad that that ball wasn't completed, or I'm not glad that Lamar's got pressure in his face again and having to navigate that. Is it a throwaway? I don't think so. Maybe. I think if it's a throwaway, Lamar gets as much on it as he possibly can. But we had to settle for a field goal. I think made it 13-10 at the half. I might have the score wrong there. Forgive me for that. But do you think 12 personnel was as effective as I do? I thought 12 personnel was extremely effective. Is it our best option at this point? I don't know. I really like the possessions where Monken goes from one personnel group to another. I would prefer a little bit more of the 6 possession style. I showed you guys the pictures earlier. I don't know that we need to be as flexible as what you're seeing right here on the 5th possession. I do wonder about the intentional nature of it, meaning is Monken intentionally going from one possession, staggering them basically. One possession being very versatile, staccato, 11, 12, 21, 11, 21, 21, 11, 12. Is he doing that intentionally to get the defensive coordinator trained mentally for that type of possession, and then going back to this generic 12 personnel the whole time? I don't know what the benefit of that would be other than just trying to be a dick, and that's what a lot of offensive coordinators are at times. So I think Todd Monken's stumbled onto something here with 12 personnel. I think we've got to use the jet dive out of 12 to unlock Derrick Henry more this week. The Raiders defense, I'll have a video out about them Friday or Saturday morning. They're very tough and physical. I thought they were extremely difficult to run the football on consistently, meaning in the Chargers game, week 1. And then J.K. popped some big ones in the second half. Gus had a handful of runs in the 4 to 6, 7 yard range. But by and large, you're looking at a number of 1 and 2 yard gains. They were really good up front. A lot of attention going to be paid to Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, clearly, deservedly so. Some of the best players in the league at their position. So it looks like a severe disadvantage for our offensive line at times. Robert Spillane is a classic balanced inside linebacker who has played far better for the Raiders than people give him credit for, even against the pass. And he's got history of success against the Ravens dating back to his time with the Steelers. So it's going to be an interesting matchup and challenge for us. I think we've probably got to get. My hope is that we only need to get to 21 points to win this game, and that our defense can really get after their offense. I'll have a longer preview. It's been a fun week trying to watch Raiders film and try to watch, of course, because they're playing against J.K. and Gus. So the dynamic there is so weird for us as Ravens fans to now face them 1 week later. I wonder about our advantages there with the Harbaughs communicating to each other. But in any case, you guys let me know what you think of our personnel usage, the possessions that I gave you back-to-back 5th and 6th, some of the larger points I tried to make in terms of how intentional Monken is being in moving around the defense, manipulating the defense in terms of who's on the field for them when they react to our 11, 12, or 21 personnel groups. This is a fun one for me to do. If you'd like to see more of this in the future, please let me know. If you're a part of my Patreon or Discord, you have access to the game file that I made up, but NFL.com puts one out. It doesn't include personnel and formation data, though. That's what I try to offer, is give you personnel and formation data. The online database will be updated hopefully before the Raiders game, and we'll have yards per play out of each of those personnel groups. I'm sure rating services who have staffs have theirs out already. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look/analysis at the Ravens personnel groups in Week 1 loss to the Chiefs, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.